As I just mentioned, Marissa, you're actually the first two-time guest on the Gill Athletics Connections podcast. How must that make you feel?
That actually makes me smile. I like that a lot. There's a few firsts that you get in life, and I'll take this one.
That's right. If you're a regular listener, you might be wagging your finger at me and say, well, wait a minute, Harry Mara has been on here 3 times. I don't count the great Harry Mara as a 2-time multiple guest because we planned those 3 parts. And again, if you have not listened to those 3 parts, I can't recommend it enough to go listen to those right now. On the same vein, I would recommend episode 20 before you listen today, because we've got our 2-time guest here, Marissa Chu. Marissa is the assistant coach at IUPUI over in Indianapolis, and also the leader, guru, master of ceremonies, video production assistant, not assistant, video production
Yeah.
director, host of the Facebook group called Coaches Collab. On April 2nd, it was episode 20 for the Connections podcast. We were humbled enough to have Marissa on the show to talk about just about Coaches Collab. So I thought after a 2-month kind of growth period for them, we'd get Marissa back here, talk about the Coaches Collab, and get to know Marissa a little bit better. So Marissa, thanks for joining us again today.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to reconvene.
That's it. You do this on a daily basis, so this is you're like a pro at it. Like you might be the most professional guest I have had here on the Connections podcast. So let's recap here. I was re-listening to our interview from April 2nd. So by the time you're listening to that now, it's been about 2.5 months. We were celebrating that you had passed your 2 weeks mark. This started on March 17th, and you were celebrating 1,800 coaches in the group. Fast forward to today, I just checked it before we hit the record button, over 3,200 coaches.
Unreal.
The first question, did you think it was going to get this big?
Never, ever. It's so funny because yesterday John Hill had liked the original post of the call out on Facebook.
Wow.
And I laughed. I literally laughed out loud, and I was like, holy crap. Like, it started as a 3-picture post of me just saying, who wants to hang out? Because I'm bored, and let's talk a little bit of track and maybe talk a little bit about our gripes, and funny enough, people are just so eager, especially with our current climate, to speak on everything, that people started to re-like it. And so I had to put a little blurb in. I said, hey, everybody, you're already in. Like, if you read the post, this is Coaches Collab, guys. But it's unreal. I never in a million years thought this thing was going to go national. None of my days, of the minutes of anything that's been going on, did I think it would go international. And, we've got people requesting from Brazil, Australia, where else have I seen? India, China, France, all over. And, I'm like, what? Are you serious? It's crazy.
And are they all answering the 2 questions, the gatekeepers that you have?
So let's talk about that evolution.
Okay, when we started, let's make sure everybody, first of all, if you need to know the history, you need to go back and listen to episode 20. We're not going to talk about how we got started with the Coaches Collab here. We're going to move forward. But there is, when you go to join, and if you're listening now and you've joined, you know this, there are 2 questions. You spoke about how there was a waiting list because people just refuse to answer these 2 questions, and you're like, I'm not letting you in. So you can't do these 2 questions, you can't contribute. So how's it going with the 2-question gatekeeping?
So I think it was shortly after we spoke last, I ended up evolving that into 4 questions.
Holy cow.
Right, I know, double the quantity. Because what was happening is we had a few student athletes that were trying to get in, and that actually were answering it, so they were being automatically approved. And I was like, we've got enough NCAA violations or requirements to adhere by. I'm not going to get you guys in this one. So I booted them out, and I respectfully gave them a notice, hey, like, when you're not accountable roster spot, let me know. I'd love to have you here, just not right now. It's not permissible. So I did end up evolving that into 4 questions. Are you a student athlete that can be counted on an NCAA roster or any type of roster? And then the other question I added was in regards to, we already had contributions, we had the association. There's another one, whatever it is. So I did evolve it to 4. What ended up happening is people, the negative people, so the people who are just trying to hijack or just be messy in the group, were figuring out that they could get automatically approved. So they were answering the 4 questions, and I was having to go back and go through these automatic approvals, as well as those who were only answering some of the questions, not all the questions. So in figuring out how people were able to just answer some, not all, and with having to double check the automatic approvals, I went back and just said, everybody has to be approved by an admin. So now there's no automatic approval. And so for the most part, it's myself. I don't ask any of the other administrators to do it. I mean, none of us are getting paid for it. This is my baby, so I'll take care of it.
That sounds like a change, because I believe last time we spoke, you were the only administrator. So you have people now, almost like a board, I would think, or something like that, to help you with some of this?
Correct. So I have at this point, we're at 5 leaders of each event group or event discipline. There's actually more than that, but 5 groups of, I should say. So we've got Gabby Grideau. I never say it right, so I apologize, Gabby.
Gabby G. It's Gabby
yeah,
G.
Right. Yes, exactly. And then we've got Iggy Ignac, and I never say that either. So my bad, Iggy. And I can't spell it. We always laugh at that. I can't spell it for the life of me. Wednesdays, we've got Thomas Gesser and Ross Dexter for strength and conditioning. Sprints right now, we had Alan Dunton in. He's got some stuff going on trying to figure out. So he's spotty, which is totally fine. Again, this is contributing on your own time. Lovely enough, he was able to implement Andreas Bem from Altus, so that was great. But he also has a busy schedule, so I'm trying to figure out who else I can put on that one. Myself, as always, and then we've got Joseph Blue for the throws. So that group of people, they all have administrative ability. I'll say that much. But I don't ask them to do anything they're not comfortable with, or anything beyond the means of just moderating their groups and coming up with their group topics and whatnot.
Well, shout out to those leaders. We talked about last time the role of a leader and selflessness, and how you had stepped up to build this. I'd love to continue shout outs to people who then continue to lead and do that. So Joseph
Absolutely.
and Iggy and Gabby, and Gabby, I know you're listening right now. I know it's not new to you for people to butcher your last name. So sorry. We love you to death.
Yeah, I know, totally.
And then Andreas and Alan, again, just great people. Oh, and Ross Dexter, and who's the other gentleman for strength and conditioning?
Thomas Gesser.
Thomas Gessler. Yeah,
Thomas,
right.
yeah.
I got to know those two.
Stanford as well.
Through coaches Collab. So shout out to those guys. I love that. So you touched on the NCAA issues, not violations, but concerns of recruiting and this whole new world of Zoom and all that kind of good stuff. Maybe that's a good transition. I was going to ask you what has changed since April 2nd. 2 weeks in, now we're almost 3 months in. What's changed? What kind of things surprised you that you didn't know you would have to tackle?
Yeah. Oh man, that was a doozy.
Explain that. So what was going on with that?
So, not in a negative manner, but as most entities and people do at that, whenever there's something new, they're a little fearful, so they'll both wholeheartedly on the brakes, stop everything, and they start to ease up and allow for different things to happen, hence shelter in place, and now we are able to go out freely with.
I was going to say, that sounds eerily familiar.
Right, exactly. So when this first we have literally COVID-19 rules per the NCAA. And we, at one point, were not allowed to do Zoom calls with anybody of a recruitable age or their coaches. And then they lightened up and said, okay, you can collaborate as long as there's no recruiting speak, as long as no prospective student athletes are present. I said, okay, hoop one, got it. Then it got out to, if you have it so that it can be classified as a speaking engagement, open season. Okay, but you can't record. Okay, well now you can record. Okay, is it considered a broadcast? Well, I record and then make the link available. Yeah, but that's not really a broadcast. Okay. Well, it's kind of like a podcast. No, it's not. Okay. And so literally my compliance department was so irritated with me. They don't say that they were, but I could see their eyes rolling through the phone when I was
And,
calling them.
and was all this coming down within like a, say, a 5-day span? I remember there was some back and forth. Yes, we can do this. Now we can't. We're going to go over
Hmm.
cautiously here. Was this all like bang, 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 quick, or was this over a span of a few weeks?
So the first hit was, there was probably a month before it happened, maybe 3 weeks before the shutdown and then the first implementation, or that I was made aware of at that. Um, After that, it was probably every other week, give or take. Um, they were generally coming out on Thursday evening, so it would directly affect the Friday call
Mm.
and then going over the weekend because business people don't like to work on the weekends, even if it's at home. So we were waiting
I
until
feel
Monday
personally
and like,
attacked right there, Marissa. Now that I'm in the private sector, not coaching, yes, I like my weekends, and I know you coaches like your weekends too. You just happen to have to
very
work
true.
on them. So,
Very true. And you know what's so funny is, total sidebar. Having grown up working in the service industry, I've never known what a weekend, quote unquote, stereotypical weekend is.
mhm,
Because Saturday and Sunday are days that you make money, and so
mhm.
my weekends were always Monday and Tuesday. And so I was like, it's just another day. It ends in Y to me. And it carries over, and it's not the greatest of mentalities when you're trying to leave a quote unquote quality of life in the
Mm,
average normal life.
mhm.
But yeah, it's one of those things. Not a big deal. To me, anyhow, I should say.
How did you, when you were
But what was the
going,
thing?
when you were going through all the NCAA rules and they were changing and things like that, and I think at one point you had to not have any non-collegiate coaches. I think that might be the right way to
Correct.
say it. Club coaches, high
Hmm.
school coaches, things like that. I know there was an issue with the concern, I think, from NCAA was the chat bar. You don't get to see the chat bar, so there could be
Correct.
some things going on there, which is crazy because that same things could be happening on your text messaging, Facebook
Thank you.
Messenger, etc. But okay, I think you
Right.
you actually described it, I think, really well. Anything new, people are going to be ultra conservative, and then maybe releasing out. So
Hmm.
maybe I can see both sides of that, absolutely. But that was a pretty hectic time. It appears from the outside, it appeared hectic because of the changes that had to happen. You're describing how
Hmm.
internally it was pretty hectic. At any time during this, was there any thought for you of like, you know what? It's not worth it. I'll just pull the plug, or I'll just step out and let other people deal with it.
I didn't. This is my baby. It's one of those things where, even at the end of the day when I have the double calls and I'm navigating my two kids who now want all of my attention after that, it's one of those things I feel so passionately about. It's I said it from day one. I continue to think it, and it's definitely engraved and just in the entity of itself is there's so much valuable knowledge, tidbits, relationships, networks, whatever you want to call it, that can be nurtured through this. And I love it. It's one of those things I can't let it go. I don't think I can. I thought about this, when life resumes, whenever, however that may be, whatever our new normal is, you know, am I going to be able to handle this? And I told myself, I was like, I'm going to make it work, whatever it is. And, you know, we'll get to it as to like what it looks like 6 months down the road, but I have to keep it going. It's one I have to. It's my personal mission statement right now is where I have to make sure that this fosters forward because there's way too much to get from to receive from this.
You mentioned, you're a mom of two kids. That alone, I know personally because I have two kids as well, and definitely mom is a full-time job, full-time and a half. Is that possible? We always talk about part-time, full-time. What's
Right.
full-time and a half? It's a
Time and a
two.
half.
Yeah,
Right.
time and a half, exactly. Overtime, all the time. So
Hmm.
that you are a professional and you're assistant coach at a program. And while we certainly don't have meets and things like that going on, you still have a job to do. And you're doing this, and there are calls literally every day, sometimes multiple a day. How do you find the time? And maybe more importantly, and you kind of started touching on this, why do you find the time to do this?
How I find the time, I schedule it out. I'm a scheduler, very type A person. So literally in our calendar, my calls are slotted out. My daughter is very much like me in the making. So she says, Mom, it's Tuesday. You have a call at 12 o'clock and 2 o'clock, correct? I said, yes, babe. And she goes, okay, I'll make sure the house is quiet. And I'm like, okay, thanks,
Wait a
babe. I
minute. How old is
appreciate
this
you.
young lady?
She's 13 going
No,
on
she's
14.
not. Yeah, she's a
I know.
30-year-old professional. Get out of here.
She
Holy
is.
cow.
She is. It's a riot. It really is.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I schedule them out. I let them know what my objective is. My kids, this is what we have to get done today. And I'm not militant by any means, but this is our objective. You know, in the morning, we're going to get X, Y, and Z done. I'm going to have my calls. After my calls, we'll hang out. We'll take care of whatever we need to take care of, and we'll keep moving. And my son, who is the complete opposite end of the spectrum, it's like, but I want it now. I'm like, that's awesome. I want a lot of things right now, but you're not getting it. So, I have his sister to help me wrangle him in and appease him. And, definitely not fair on her part because she's not allowed to, or not able to just kind of fly by the seat of her pants with him. But we also know, being a 3-person circus, for the most part, we all wrangle each other in. And there are days, it was the funniest thing ever. I had gone on a walk, and it was on Monday because we had postponed all calls for the week. So no calls were taking place, and I did not communicate that with her. And so went on a walk. I got back about 12:15ish. Now, they don't have cell phones, so she had no way of communicating with me. I didn't go far. Plus, we're in West Lafayette. There's nothing that's going to happen. But I came back, and she was frantic. She's like, Mom, it's 12:15. You missed your call. And I was like, oh, babe, I appreciate you. I said, you can breathe. I said, I don't have any calls this week. She goes, no calls? Why not? Don't those people need to talk to you? I said, well, maybe. I said, but all the leaders agreed that we all could use a week of just rehab for ourselves. And she goes, okay, no calls. I said, well, let me rephrase that,
You had to
honey.
convince her.
I know, right? Like, this will be okay. We will survive. I said, I have no coaches collab calls. I will probably have some other calls I'll need to get on. She goes, okay, Mom. I was like, okay, thanks for your permission, lady.
Right.
Sheesh,
Oh
tough
man.
crowd.
So what are you, this is going to maybe sound incorrect, but I'm going to ask it anyway. I'm allowed to make mistakes, right, Marissa? What are
More than
you
fine.
what are you getting out of this group as the leader of the group? Or have you seen things that you maybe didn't think you would get positives out of, that you were getting enriched in your personal and professional life?
That's a great question, honestly, because it is out of passion, and so that's an intangible. Um, I can say the recognition is awesome. I don't care about it, but it's awesome. You know what I mean? For people to recognize the good works, the great doings, um, the nutrients that I'm putting back into the coaching world. That's awesome. That is honestly one of the greatest rewards I can get out of this. Personally, the network, kind of what you mentioned on your podcast with Chucky, the networking that I'm growing is unreal to me. Honestly, I made the joke a few weeks ago on one of the Zoom calls how I feel like I know everyone on the call, and I have met maybe 20 of them at the most, in person, not even just on a phone call. But that resource right there is amazing. That was one of the original points of the mission statement. Is I wanted everybody to be able to go anywhere in the country and know that they have an ally, an associate that they can reach out to if they needed anything. Back in the day, and this isn't back in the day anymore because this is a true characteristic of what we'll have to do, is when we're driving and we need to do a shakeout, I know I can contact X, Y, or Z person at A, B, and C university, institution, or high school and say, hey, can I jump on your truck for a shakeout on our way through? So it's one of those things that I really wanted to foster. There are some who have told me, and this is not something of my own recognition, like, you know, this is the best line of of your resume that you could have created. And I see it. It's one of those things, you know, call it what you may. I call it a victim of. It's not that dramatic, definitely not dramatic like that. But of being the wrong minority. And so, you know, being a female and then being Asian in a power group, I'm not the right minority. And so it's one of those things where, yes, it's a great line on my resume, but it still doesn't give me the line of I can coach. Because now I know how to network. Now I know how to organize. Now I know how to administer things of any nature. But it still doesn't give me results that I can post on TFers, or, you know, this person has coached this, this, and this to this, to this, and this level. So it's awesome. Don't get me wrong. I love this, and recognition or not, I would keep doing it day in and day out. But that's the missing piece. So I know you asked me what's the positive, but it's allowing me to bypass that. So that's the positive in that whole entire diatribe that I just went through. The positive is those who may not have wanted to give me credit or give me even some attention prior will give me the glimpse so that I can show them the rest. So
without naming names, have there been, you get some great positives there. Have there been any negatives that you maybe didn't foresee coming down?
So I foresaw them.
Hmm.
I was just waiting for them to happen, to be honest. And not to say that I'm a pessimist, but I'm a realist. I definitely am a realist, where I see all sides of the coin and I don't manifest them. It's one of those things that I acknowledge and push to the side, because that's just how we live as a society now. There's always going to be a negative to the positive. And I get that, because there's naysayers, and there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing, because we need it. We need the balance. But there have been some who have made comments about, oh, well, of course, this person or that person is recognizing her because of Coaches Collab. But do they know she can coach? I'm like, oh, got it. And so that's kind of what I was just alluding to prior. You know, with conjunction of the Coaches Collabs calls and the LLC calls that we do weekly, there was a comment made, oh, well, of course you think that way, because you have associations with this person, and this person. And I'm like, no, I'm very capable of having my own ideas, and definitely had them way before this happened. But thanks. I appreciate that. I appreciate the fact that I can be brainwashed. Sure. Yeah. And, you know, so it's one of those things I think, is that comment being made because I'm a female? Is that comment being made because I'm a minority female, or just a minority at that, you know? In the profession that we've chosen as coaches, I definitely lean to the being a female versus males. But, you know, I take it as an opportunity. You know, there's been groups that have spun off of the Coaches Collab already, and that's awesome. That's what I wanted too. I wanted small groups of networkings so that people can collaborate together and just find strength within their voices. So the naysayers are great, because it just makes me get louder.
This is a great segue. You mentioned the Athletics LLC. This is a group, if you haven't heard of these, you may not be a regular listener to this podcast, to be real frank, but Athletics LLC is a weekly show. It's on YouTube. You can go there right now and YouTube search Athletics LLC. I think we're up to episode 9 or 10 by the time this comes out.
Yeah.
Marissa, and I'm not going to get all the nicknames. I'm not, but Marissa, I kind of act as the host, the moderator, if you will, with a regular 3-panel of Mike Holloway from Florida, Charles. I think I'm good enough friends with him now to call him Chuck Ryan, from Cal Berkeley, and Chris Huffins, multi-time Olympian, decathlete, record holder, medalist, all around good dude, to be real frank with you. And you talk about really, it's a kind of like, it feels like for me as an extension of some of the topics in Coaches Collab, where you talk about value and persistence. There was a really good one here recently about what's wrong with cross country, things like that. How do you make the Olympic teams? What's wrong with that process? things like that. So if you have not seen this show, if you want to watch it, highly suggest, again, go to YouTube and search Athletics LLC. And then have been gracious enough to have permission that we rerun those broadcasts for those individuals who want just an audio portion. Maybe you're running, and I don't know how that feels.
Right.
That is over. My career and life of running is over. But if you want the audio version, we publish those after an extended time frame from the videos. The videos are, I think the videos are a little bit better, to be real frank, because you get to see people and your interactions, and you four have just really good chemistry, and it continues to evolve. The chemistry does. And then you have some great guests. Otto Bolden has been a guest. Was it Alan Johnson? Was that the hurdler?
Correct.
Yeah, okay, I can remember which hurdler. Alan Johnson, the great Alan Johnson, has been on there, and I'm sure there's more to come. So great segue there. But what I wanted to talk about, so through the Zoom calls that you do in Coaches Collab, and there are some, maybe the calls that you would expect with 3,000 plus coaches together. There's been a 5K, 10K talk, how to make athletes better. There's been the long jump. There was a really good 400 hurdle Zoom call. I shouldn't even delineate anyone as very good, because they're all extremely good, to be real honest with you. Long jump, high jump, et cetera, et cetera. The ones that I have been most involved in, since I don't coach anymore, my passion is towards coaches and their personal and professional development, have been the ones that you guys have hosted about networking, budgeting, women in coaching, as you brought up. You kind of seem to have a personal connection with that one for some reason, Marissa.
Who knows?
But those have been, I like the topics for me, and what my passion is towards coaches, and our passion here at Gill is about the things other than coaching. So again, the budgeting, network. And one of the ones that I found extremely interesting was the networking one. Everybody wants to know everybody, and everybody wants what they think, because they're from the outside, is the next best job. And I just found that one fascinating. And I thought it was kind of maybe a little meta as you were hosting that one, and people were asking, what is networking? How do you know when you're doing it right? And those kind of things, right? And all I could do, and this may sound weird, Marissa, don't let this weird you out. I honestly was kind of staring at you during this whole Zoom call, because you and what you are doing with the Coaches Collab is the epitome of real, positive, authentic networking. When you're networking, when you are, I think in the chat, I usually participate just in the chat instead of the video, because I'd rather hear from coaches, to be frank. But in the chat, I said something like, good networking, positive network is, you're doing it right when you don't think you're doing it. and what I meant by that is not the glad handing, shaking hands, making sure you see every coach at convention, and you can't see me right now, but I'm doing the air pistols or something,
The guy.
You, Marissa, you have done an amazing job at networking, and your network has expanded because you did something to give value to others. You didn't, this wasn't so, oh man, I'm gonna do this so I get to know Mike Holloway, or I get to know Robin John. It was like, oh, how can I provide value to other coaches? And so I'm sure you've seen your network grow. You mentioned that a little bit. Last time we were on the podcast, you were real geeked out about Harry Mara and Andreas Baim. Who else has been stepping in and has done some panels and things like that you've just been like, hey, real proud that this guy or gal has, given their time to others?
Nick Wickelman. That was a crazy one. I was low-key fangirling out because my book had come like the day or two before we had him as a guest, and I was like, oh my God. And it's so funny because I thumbed through it, and the irony of it is I see the value, and I wholeheartedly agree with everything he says in every part of his book. And I made the comment on Twitter about it. I said, this is a very pedagogy-based teaching book. And so for me, having a teaching base as where I started from, it was nothing new. It was just using different words because it applied to athletics and whatnot. But I love it because it's the one thing that I preach to any coach that I speak to that wants guidance, or that just, I'm kind of stuck. How do I get through this? It's one of those things you have to go back to the base. And so having him reiterate all of that for me, I was like, oh, okay, I'm not screwing everyone up. Having Brooks Johnson just a
Yes.
part of everything, and he's first naming me, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And I laughed because I was listening to the podcast that you did with him, and he's like, I don't even know where this girl coaches. And I was like, oh, yeah, sorry, coach. I do have a job. I promise. And I literally laughed out loud because it's Brooks, So his tone that he's delivered it in, and he's like, I don't even care. She's just a cool kid. And I was like, thanks, coach. I gotcha. You know, um, the one of the first ones that I was kind of just mouth wide open was Andreas, because we see his face, we see his name all over Altus, and he is one of the profiles that we recognize, amongst others from Altus. So I was like, oh, why is he here? What do I have to give him that he doesn't already know? And not I per se, but the entity itself. That was awesome. Everyone that Iggy had on any of his calls. I love the strings that he pulls. Having, I guess it's almost any of the panelists that we've invited from the outside in. It's one of those things that it's like, man, they want to contribute. And I don't know that they want to foster anything post Zoom call. And that's totally fine. But I love the fact that they wanted to give back. And that's the biggest thing for me is, at the very core of it, they're people who want to contribute as well. And maybe didn't think much of it in the beginning, but by the end of the 2 hours or so, they saw the value. And, I don't know if one of the other coaches that were on the call reaches out to them for insight or even just well wishes. That's the exciting part for me. And so, a funny one that I loved and I was very giggly about was when we had our HEPs on for the multi-call. So we had Erica Bogard and Annie Kuntz, and they were hilarious. Hilarious, because they showed us that they're just regular people who are naturally athletic and really good at what they do. And so it was one of those things that I hoped that, we didn't have a huge group. I think we had just under 50, if I'm not mistaken, at our peak of the call, that you don't have to be militant as an athlete. You have to be serious when it counts, but they're silly, goofy, young adults, and that's okay for that. So I love that those are the great parts that I love to see, these recognized names come and visit with us.
The other thing that's been so impressive, it's easy to devolve in what we're doing with these Zoom calls, right? So you get in, you get 50 to 100 people together, and it just becomes a whining session or whatnot. But the leaders of each of these Zoom calls, including you, Marissa, you get there is serious pre-thought to these meetings. A lot of them have published outlines of what we're going to talk about during the session, and that not only helps keep a flow to the actual meeting, but it helps provide more value to people that are there as well. And like I said, it just doesn't devolve into just 50 people getting together to catch up. It's actually like, hey, we're here to achieve something. We have a goal. Yeah, purpose. Right. Exactly. Yeah, I love that. So where does it go from here, Marissa? I mean, eventually we're going to get back into, I almost said real coaching, on the track coaching. How about that?
Yeah.
We're going to start recruiting. We're going to start traveling for that. Looks like everything is as normal as possible. We're going to have a fall practice cross country season, and we're going to have an amazing 2021 track season, because people are going to be so excited and
so
pumped to get back on there. Yeah, exactly. It's going to be magical. I'm super pumped. But where does this go? You got time now. How I don't know, being a parent, but you do seem to have time. Where does this go? Have you started thinking about how this evolves and continues to evolve positively in the future?
So in regards to frequency, we lower that a little bit, and kind of like a training plan, we lower the frequency and increase the intensity. The time duration doesn't necessarily have to, this is literally like a training plan. The time duration doesn't have to increase or decrease. It just has to be valuable. And so with that, whether we go to once a week, twice a week for calls, not necessarily topics. We do that, maybe one event group, discipline, whatever you want to call it, goes a week, and that's it. So, as much as I'm a preacher of Sundays or family days and, personal days, if you don't have a family per se, I may chuck out 2 hours of that and just chunk that for Coaches Collab, and I think that is how we kind of reinvest personally into ourselves. It has value to it, but we're able to sit down, prosper, progress, whatever we want to call it, our careers while having very low intensity workouts, active recovery, if you would.
Yeah.
So looking something like that, I'm in the process now of kind of shaping this into something that has longevity. And so I won't divulge too much, but it's an active plan to where personal benefits for myself and my partners will increase. And in the long run, the coaching world will increase.
Well, check that box. You've already done that. The coaching world has certainly increased because of the value that you and now these other leaders that have stepped up have provided. We're having a bit of audio issue, maybe, Marissa? So that's a good transition for us to talk about you, Marissa. We've talked about your baby, as you describe it, the Coaches Collab. Let's talk about you. Maybe let's go back to the beginning. Tell us kind of where you're from, how you got into coach, or how you got into track and field, and how did you get into coaching?
So I'm born and raised a California kid. I was born in San Francisco, grew up in the Bay Area, in the East Bay, out in Concord. One of two to a single mom. And so she was like, okay, I have to work. So how do I make sure these kids don't kill themselves? So she stuck us in every after school activity she could find that we would stick with, which actually was a lot. We were one of those, both my brother and I are we're athletically inclined. We're not necessarily the great. My brother was definitely more inclined than I. But it's the adage of I was good at a few or more than a few things, not great at a whole bunch. So I'm not quite sure like how that works out best. In retrospect, in college, I don't know that I had the mentality to be a heptathlete, but definitely that would have been a better road for me had I been open to it. I would assume. My coaches are way smarter than I was at that point and didn't even bother to ask me to start running anything. So,
so what were you? What kind of events did you do?
I was a jumper. I was a long, triple, and high jumper. So the funny part is, so I started track at the CYO level. So I started, I think it was in 7th grade, if not 8th grade, mainly because my friends were doing it. And I was like, well, let's see, I don't do a spring sport yet. I've got like 4 months of nothing before summer starts and I start playing club volleyball. So let's figure that out. And so I vividly remember running the 400 and saying, never again will I ever put myself in this race.
Just block that out.
Yeah. Oh, and it was so funny because it's so, what's the word I'm thinking of? So naive and innocent of how I got in. So we were at the CYO meets, or, you sign up, your coach doesn't even really, well, back in the day, I don't know how it goes now. But, you sign up for whatever, you just show up to the call time and you just go. And so a friend of mine, she was like, I'm going to run the 400. Come with me. I was like, okay, well, I'm done with the jumps. So why not? Slap. Oh my goodness.
That is the great example of negative peer pressure.
Right? Exactly. I
Be
told her,
careful
I was
who
like,
you hang
never
out with,
again.
folks.
Yeah. Come find out she's a cross country kid in high school and whatnot and running MD and long distance. And I was like, you suck.
That was the
That
end
is
of the
horrible.
friendship.
Yeah. We came around the turn, or coming off the 110, 120, and I legitimately turned to her and I said, this is stupid.
In the middle of the race.
In the middle of the race. I was like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life. Oh, it was oh man. But, so that was the start. my freshman year of high school, I was at Carondelet, which is the all-girls school that partners the sister school of De La Salle in California, the big football school. So was tracked to do pretty well, no pun intended. And so at that time we had, oh my gosh, Tiffany something, I just forgot her name. But she ended up playing for the U.S. national team in women's soccer. And then we had Kristen Gordon, who was our long distance standout, who ended up running for Georgetown. And
Whoa.
so the thought was I would take Tiffany, oh gosh, she was a Puma athlete and everything. I cannot remember her name. I was supposed to, kind of develop into her leg of the 4x1 hurdle and then maybe long jump. Got sidelined by a knee injury, ended up having a meniscal tear. So was what it was, got sidelined early, had surgery that summer, ended up transferring schools because figured out, you know what, I'm not that high caliber to be sought after at the Catholic school. And so let me go to the public school where I'll be a little higher tiered. So in comparison, going D1 mid-major to going to D2, something that we can all relate to at this point. Did track and field the rest of the 3 years at Ignacio Valley High School. Fell into track and field at the collegiate level on accident.
Oh.
So my number one sport was volleyball. Never the plan. Never. Funny enough. And I didn't realize at the time I was better at track. And, I had accepted my, no scholarships, no nothing, not even the talks, not even, volleyball was lightly spoken about, preferred walk-on status. So I had accepted my application or accepted my admission to San Francisco State. And when we had communication, my club coach and I had communication with the volleyball coach there at the time. And I showed up, I think it was in July, and I said, Coach, I've lost communication with you. When are we trying out? What's the deal? She goes, we've already done tryouts and teams closed. And my mouth was like, oh. I said, well, I wish I would have gotten correspondence because I would have definitely made it a point to be here. And she said, well, the opportunity is gone. Track and field coach's office is down the hall. And I was like, wow, okay, thank you. I will be down the hall then. And so, they let me know fall workouts and whatnot. And I just kind of fell into it. Was not good at all. I am a self-proclaimed Title IX placeholder. And I knew that, and it was one of those things, my coach tolerated me, bless his heart, Kevin Smith, bless his heart. And I had fun. It was great. It was one of those things that, I have lifelong friendships from it. We just had a Zoom call, I think it was last month, with 20 of us who got back together from those teams that I was on. And then after that, 2 years on the team at San Francisco State, I stepped away from track and field. It was one of those things where at San Francisco, unless you're a student athlete, you weren't getting classes on time. I have friends who took 7 years to get their diploma and they're not doctors at all. I'm like, tough life. So I actually took advantage of the opportunity to continue my education down in Long Beach. And I went to Long Beach State as a NARP. I was a non-athletic, regular ass person, and it was weird. Yeah. And so, prior to making that decision, I went on an unofficial and visited with Andy Scythe. And he said, I love him to death. Yes. Love him to death. He said, if you're interested, come out, let me know, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, yeah, I'm done. I was not even competitive at the D2. There's no way I'm going to put myself through D1 rigor. And so I just finished up my degree in kinesiology with an emphasis on physical education. I laugh, and till this day it's still a joke, because I had to take a track and field class as part of my undergrad. And he was the teacher. And he goes, why do I know you? And I said, well, truth be told, I came on an unofficial, and then I decided not to come out. And he goes, we've got room. I said, Coach, you are out of your mind. I'm six to 8 months at that point removed. There's no, and we know how much 6 to 8 months can do. If you go hard in the paint as a NARP, you go hard. And so, I stepped away, and it was great for what it was. And, I'm appreciative of that time now, because I don't think I'd have the appreciation that I do now for track and field. you know.
That's interesting you say that, because I've been kind of touting this with internally and then externally with coaches and such, that I think next year is going to be absolutely amazing, because we have found out what it feels like to have something we love, track and field,
Hmm.
taken away from us. So
Absolutely.
I can't wait for, and certainly it's going to start with cross country. The first cross country meet, coaches are going to be able to see each
Oh
other
my
and
gosh.
just be so happy to
Right.
be there. The first indoor meet, first outdoor meet. Convention is going to be,
Yeah.
I mean,
Crazy.
we sometimes take for granted what we have on a daily basis, and so to have this great sport taken
Hmm.
away from us, I think a lot of coaches are starting to realize, like, oh man, you know what, it's like reflame. It's like, oh, this
Hmm.
is why I love this sport, and I'm sad that I'm not be able to take care to take part of it, and
Exactly.
now I will. So super interesting with you, Marissa. You were doing track in college, actually started with volleyball aspirations. So where did coaching fit into? You're not supposed to be a track coach. How did this happen?
Exactly. Exactly. So when I left track and field completely, I went into restaurant management. I was
Hmm.
in restaurant the industry for a while. I didn't leave the restaurant industry entirely until 2018. So
Hmm.
yeah, 2018. That was
Oh
crazy.
wow, that's like
Yeah,
yesterday.
exactly. Right. And so it was one of those things, in California, we all know the whole myth, and it's not a myth by no means, that you can't live with just one job unless you're running Google, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You're not working with only one job.
Right.
And so at that point, um, I had my first child down in LA, or in the Southern California area, came back up to the Bay Area, was going to have my second child, my son. And my best friend from college, who I participated on the track and field team with, she was being groomed to be the head coach at Hayward High School in the Bay Area.
Hmm.
And she reached out to me and she was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" I was like, "Well, just getting ready to have a kid, just pop this bad boy out."
Just that little
And she
thing.
goes, "Yeah, and I have big babies too." Side note, like my daughter was 11 pounds. And yeah, seriously, that's not even like 10 pounds, 15 ounces. So I think I'm safe to say she was 11 pounds.
First of
And then,
all, I'll
yeah,
speak for every guy here and say it don't matter how big, not happening. Holy cow, as a
yeah,
father of two,
yeah,
I'm gonna tell my wife when
seriously.
I go home tonight. She's gonna be like, "Whoa."
What? Exactly. I was all baby, scared the crap out of everybody when I turned around, because she was huge, huge. And then it was so funny because when I had my son, um, he came out and they're like, "Oh, 9 pounds." I think it was 4 ounces to be exact. And I was like, "Oh." And they're like, "What do you mean? Oh." I said, "His sister's 11 pounds. That's on the
You're like,
smaller
my
end."
PR is 11
Right?
pounds.
Exactly. Exactly. And they're like, "Holy crap." And so it was funny because, like, and I think it only took a week, maybe 2 weeks, and this bad boy just blew up. He was in over the 100th percentile after that. He was a huge fat boy. Um, but yeah, I breed big kids. So I digress.
Yeah.
I had him, and she's like, "Okay, well, after you have him next track season, I want you to come out. I need help. I know you can do this. And, I know you've been away from teaching, because that's what I went to school for,
Mm.
teaching and coaching for a while, and track, but we can do this." And I was like, "All right." So I committed to 3 days a week, and, it was great. And then very shortly after the commitment, it turned into 5 days a week, and then everything. And I just couldn't step away from it. I loved it. It reinvigorated me to become a teacher again and use my degree and use my credential. So I did that. And honestly, and I've said this recently, the kids are why I do it.
Mm.
They are amazing. I was just having a Twitter conversation with she was a thrower, not even one of my quote unquote event group athletes, but she was on the team. She's family, and it's amazing what it can cultivate. A lot of the kids in Hera, being a lower income, economic income area, um, I was more than a mentor. You know, I was one of the people who kept these kids alive day in and day out. Unfortunately, there's a handful who didn't make it out, and rest their souls in heaven. But it's one of those things where I was able to be brutally honest and help shape these kids' lives. And, you know, like we were speaking of earlier in a different conversation, you know, they make their own choices, but all I want to do is influence them to know that they have choices.
Be one of those
And
positive
so,
considerations that they consider.
exactly, exactly. I mean, there was a kid, telltale kid, and I say this story all the time, and I don't know where he is now, and I hope he's well. But he came to class and he had an ankle monitor, GPS monitor on his ankle. And so get to know him, get him to trust me a little bit. And I'm like, hey, like you should come out to track and field. You're not doing anything else. Like I see you in PE. You're decent. I can help you
Mhm.
feel some success in your life right now. And he goes, my married name was Harris at the time, and I was married when I taught. He's like, Harris, you're tripping. I'm not coming out for track and field. I see what y'all do. And I was like, no, like for real, like we got this. And he was like, no, I'm good. I was like, all right, I'm gonna put it to you this way. You see that ankle monitor? He said, yeah. I said, stupid, I hate it. I said, next time I'll make you faster to get away. And he was like, you're not wrong. I said, because you sucked on your own, didn't you? And he was like, yeah. I was like, you got caught, didn't you? He said, yeah. I said, come out to track and field. Maybe you'll be fast enough next time. You know, and he knew I was kidding. I by no means am I endorsing for anybody to run away from the police. But, you know, I had to find a way to get this kid to come.
We all
Unfortunately,
have
2 weeks
our
later.
we all have our own recruiting spiels.
Exactly, right? Unfortunately, 2 weeks later, the kid got caught before track and season.
Uh,
So, yeah, I
man.
mean, it was like a sucky end of the story, but I had him. You know,
Mhm.
it was one of those things where I had hoped and planned on just helping the kid have a better experience in life. So,
Well, it's interesting. I'm starting to notice a theme through different aspects, as we already know about what you've done and do with Coaches Collab, of a very go-giver type of attitude. So
mhm,
your friend calls and says, "I need help.
mhm,
I
mhm,
need your help. Need you to come out three days a week. Just let's start there because I know you can do it, right?" And so it's one thing to think, okay, I'm going to be a. Then I don't. It doesn't matter whether it was a volunteer coach, part-time coach, but 3 days a week. It's one thing to do it 3 days a week. Can you think of a time as you went from 3 days to 5 days to full time, et cetera? When did it switch? When did the light switch happen that you're like, oh, I'm a coach. This is what I'm supposed to be doing for my professional career.
uh, I would say it was probably at the end of that first season, 2009 season. It was one of those things, you know, just seeing the joy on the athlete's face when they finished a race, regardless of what the time was, they just finished. I remember not having anybody qualify out of our sectional, and I was upset. And I was like, oh, that means this means something to me.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy, you know? And not that it wouldn't, because anything I personally put time into, I care about. Um, but I didn't know if it was just a hobby, if it was something, you know, kind of, I had always seen track and field as something I did and I didn't suck at, but I wasn't the greatest at. And to coach, I was like, oh, I think I like this. I think this is a thing. And then so, you know, knowing that I can get paid to coach and have the number one job be teaching, but it allows me to be paid to be something else and more that I wanted, it was so enticing. And so, you know, bless the beings that were at that point in time, the Harrywood High School actually had a teaching job available as well. And so in PE, and so my best friend was like, we got to get you in here. And I was like, okay. And I was scared poopless, completely scared. I was like, am I going to make it? And she was like, we'll figure it out. I will help you however I have to. We got to get you in here. And so it was, it was at that point, I was like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And it's not that I never had quote unquote coached. I never had the title, but prior, like even in the restaurant industry, being a manager and being a lead trainer and one of the people who always kind of had a sense of guidance for those who are new or even just in the industry or in the restaurant itself. I now realize that I've always had a coaching sense to me.
Mm.
So crazy in retrospect, because I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't even see it in high school. I post things about coaching now on Facebook and Twitter and whatnot. And old teammates from high school are like, yeah, don't you remember when you taught me how to high jump? don't you remember when we were hurdling, blah, 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 and you told me to do one thing and then I finally beat you? And I was like, no, I don't remember that. But, you know, it's awesome to hear that I had that effect back then when I didn't even know.
It's special when things can line up. So your natural bend is to be a coach, to nurture and grow people. Coaching is to grow people and nurture people. There's something real special can happen when those two things actually line up. Sometimes we are naturally bent towards one thing, but for whatever circumstances, we have to get a profession in something completely opposite.
Outside of
It's so
it.
cool
Yeah.
to see it match up and start to produce some special things.
Agreed.
So this is all in California, but you're in Indiana now. So
Right.
how's a West Coaster? We spoke to Charles Ryan earlier this week or last week, and he couldn't make up his mind. He was West Coast, and he went east, and then west, and east, and west, and he's all over the map for his journey. So how did you end up getting here to the Great Midwest?
So at San Francisco State, at one of the state meets, I had, and it's an infamous night, and I think I may have referenced this before. Day one of the state meet, my head coach at the time was Kendra Reimer, and she's like, we need to go to dinner. And I said, yes, because I'm starving. And so she said, well, let me see where everybody's at. And I was like, okay. I didn't know what that meant. I literally was just along for the ride. I think I was driving. So I was there to be chauffeur. I just wanted to eat at that point. I did not care. Yeah, exactly. Wherever head coach says to go, I go. And unbeknownst to me, she had contacted whoever, and they're at the Yard House. So we went to dinner. Unbeknownst to me, who I was sitting at a table at. Now I know, and I'm like, holy crap, I should have pooped in my pants then. I was in between Boogie Johnson, Chris Huffins, across the table from Kareem Street Thompson. Jabri Harris was at the table. Devin West was at the table. Jason Schutz was at the table. Couple other people that I can't think of off the top of my head.
That's a great table. There's a lot of good people. I know a lot of those people. They're great, not just coaches, they're great people.
People, exactly. Yeah. Like, I had no clue. Literally no clue who I was sitting with.
You're just there. Hi, I'm just a driver.
Right, exactly. I was like, I just want my ahi and my salad.
That's right. Thank you. We order.
And right. And so I'm sitting there and we're literally shooting the shit, like talking, because I didn't know. I was naive. I didn't know who these people were, legitimately. So talking to Boogie at the time, and he's like, I like you. And I was like, okay, sure. Like, I don't know what that means, but okay. And he's like, you're a good kid, blah, 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 blah. And Chris Huffin, same thing. I didn't know, of course, I didn't know anything about him at the time besides his name. Funny enough, I did Google him after the fact, and I was like, oh my God. I didn't realize he was the coach at Cal. And so we swapped Bay Area stories. And then Devin West, who grew up in the Bay Area as well, we ended up all like just collaborating in funny stories and stupid things that happen only in the Bay. And so from that evening, both Boogie and Chris ended up being mentors to me. And, after that, I'm blessed. Chris really saw something special in me. He's like, you've got what it takes to keep going. And so I want to make sure that I help you keep going. And so I was his own little personal project. I guess I was the walk-on that he wanted to make sure goes to nationals. I make fun of that all the time because I was a nobody coach. And so some months go by, so a year goes by, and he goes, I have an opportunity for you to come out to Indiana at a small Division III college, but I think it's a great stepping stone for you. But you've got to leave California. And
that's hard for a Californian.
Right? We don't usually leave the wall. And I was like, I don't know. And, in the personal life at that time, I had been divorced for a year, doing it on my own. My dad was helping me. I was good, but I wasn't great. I was living, but barely living. And so I was like, you know what? It's time. Kids are young. I can do this. We can leave. Bless his family. He and his wife are so supportive, and they help me out. We are all best friends at this point. Our families do everything together. And, both of them attested to help me out however I needed, but they wanted to see me live a better life. Both of them did. So I was like, okay, here we go.
I mean, that's a leap
And
of
so
faith,
it
Miss
really
Long
was.
Jumper.
I know, right? It
Yeah.
really was. It was crazy. And so um, they both just were like, you're going to come out here and we're going to do this, and we're going to make sure that you have a great life. And so I don't remember, Chris had been in California for whatever reason. He was like, okay, like, I'm going to get in the car with you and we're going to drive. I was like, oh my God, like, no, I really got to do it. I can't back out of this one now.
Right.
And so in the latter part of June of 16, made the move, accepted the volunteer position at Wabash College. And that's what she wrote.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, you mentioned D3. It's like, that's not IUPUI. So you were with
No,
Clyde Morgan?
I was with
Yeah.
him for 18 months. Loved every single minute of that time. That college is unique. It is a call above every standard for every person on that campus. Student, athlete, professor. It is, oh man, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love IUPUI and I love what I do now, but they are special and they hold a special place in my heart. And shout out to Clyde Morgan for everything that he does for that program and that university, and even for the town of Crawfordsville. I'm sorry. It was something special. Robert H. Johnson, tell me something good. He is something else.
Hmm.
So it's an experience where I had a lot of naysayers, and that fact of you know how can you make a knowledgeable jump down from the D2 to D3 on top of going from a paid position to a volunteer position. And I said, this is the step. This is, like, I am the female who's coaching an all male squad, or an all male event group, I should say.
Mhm.
And no one can take it away from me.
Hmm.
Oh, she didn't get help from the male coach who was helping her. Oh, she can maybe coach the guys because the women are following in tail too. No, this was purely male college aged athletes with a female coach, and it was a phenomenal time.
As you mentioned, it was a volunteer position, and
Hmm.
last I checked, you can't pay rent and groceries,
Right.
and you got kids, by the way, diapers.
Yes.
I got a pay
Right.
raise when my kids got out of diapers, thank the Lord.
Oh, yes. Praise,
Uh,
yeah. Praise Jesus for those.
so we had to move on to a paid position. Is that how you got to
Hmm.
IUPUI?
Correct. So what ended up happening is Tony McDaniel had Ashley at the time. Wow, what's her married? Botham. What is a married or unmarried name? Um, she has left to take the head coaching job at Purdue Fort Wayne.
Mhm.
And so he had posted the job. I had looked at it and I was like, yeah,
Oh, you hit the mute button on yourself.
there you go. Sorry, I got a call.
Usually
So,
I mute other people, and she was muting
right?
herself. She's never done that.
No, ever actually. I had seen the position. We were at convention. It was in December, and Saul Stevens, love the guy. He goes, "Chu, you need to apply for this job. You can't be working for free anymore. I can't get you a paid position. Clyde can't get you a paid position. We need to get you paid and make sure those babies are taken care of." And I told him, I was like, I'm good. I set myself up to be in a volunteer position for 2 years. And if it didn't happen, then I'd have to step away. And that was the understanding I came here for. And he's like, no, I can't let you do that. I was like, okay, Saul, first off, shut your mouth. But so he walked me over to Tony McDaniel and he was like, Coach McDaniel, this is Coach Chu. You need to talk. And walked away. And so it was on the night, it wasn't maybe it was Bowerman. I think it was Bowerman actually. And so he and I spoke for a moment and he was like, well, I expect to see your application when we get home. I'm going to be on vacation for a few days after, but I'll look for it in my inbox. And so I said, okay. And, we got back just after Christmas. He got back just after Christmas. We had a phone interview beginning of January, and it was just full gas after that. After
Yeah.
that, yeah, I think I accepted the position and was on campus by January 16th, and it was one
Holy
of those
cow.
things, crazy fast. Indoor conference meet was I'm sorry. My
Marissa, we
athletic
really want to
trainer,
hear these things, and you keep
I
muting
know.
yourself. I told you there's no editing. You can't be
Oh,
censoring
I
yourself
know.
here.
My athletic trainer loves to call between the hours of 12 and 2, even though every day I tell her I am on a podcast or a call. Anyhow, yeah, so that's how I got to IUPUI. And,
And that was
you know,
the 16 season? What,
that was the 18 season, January
18
of 18.
season? So you have
Mhm.
18, 19, and of course 20 we know about. How's it been? It's one thing when we are interviewing and we think, this position would be perfect for me, and then you get there and sometimes it's not. How's the experience been for these past 3 seasons?
It's been good. It's been a very developing position. I was blessed to really grow administratively with Kendra, and she taught me the ins and outs of the office and just how to organize things, how to run a meet, how to think about times. I definitely had the freedom to learn how to coach an event group there. Um, with Clyde, I was able to be very autonomous with my group, and so that only reinforced that part. Um, but in both situations, I was able to coach my event group, just the jumps. And so while I loved it and it was very safe and very, very nurturing to what I needed to introduce myself to the collegiate realm, at IUPUI I was taking everything under the 8, everything in the field. So anything I recruited was all me.
Wow.
And it was a little scary. I hadn't done that since the high school ranks, and, presumably with those who were able to be collegiate athletes. So time management was huge, and not that I lacked in that at all, but
Right.
now I had, right, I had to have other people's schedules in consideration. And so we do have some facilities constraints, but I work around them. My problem solving tools, whew, I've got a toolbox at this point of how to just problem solve. My conflict resolution, yeah, off the charts. um, it's been great to be a part of building a foundation of a program. So for those, and many do know, but for those who don't, IUPUI was primarily a distance-oriented program prior. And even on the men's side, it stayed that way. We are separate programs. But Tony McDaniel he had a vision. He wanted a whole well-rounded track team as best as he could. So it really coincided with my hiring because I was that piece. All the assistants before that were either long distance or mid distance. So, since January of 18, we've went from 4 athletes to now when we walk back into fall of 20, we'll have 11, hopefully 12, still holding on to 1 recruit. And then we cover all events except for hammer, disc, and that's it, I think.
Well, shout out to you guys and Tony. Growth is good. Rising
Mm-hmm.
tide raises all ships. So anytime we hear about programs that are increasing, whether it's participation, adding programs back, this week we heard great news. Brown University
Yes,
reversed their mistake.
exactly.
We have to know that it was a
Keyword.
mistake. 2, they
Mm-hmm.
saw that mistake and were wise enough to make a change,
Exactly.
to acknowledge that mistake and then reverse course. So anytime there's growth, so 4 athletes to double digits now, and those things, it's easier to grow a peak on a peak, right? So it's going to be easier to grow from the number you have now to 20 and 30.
Exactly.
That's awesome. I love growth. That's so good.
Mm-hmm.
So where does, before you, say before you had Coaches Collab, before you created Coaches Collab, what were some avenues that you got growth from in regards to your coaches education? Did you do any USATF coaches ed, USTF
Mm-hmm.
CCAs? Did you just call up random coaches and ask them for their
Right?
advice? How,
Talk
how
to
did
me.
you grow? Yeah.
So I got into USATF coaches education. So shortly after that '09 season of track and field, I did my level 1 and was like, oh,
Where'd you do
I
that at?
I did it at Chabot College in Oakland,
Hmm.
California,
Yeah.
or Hayward, California, I should say.
Do you remember any of your teachers for that one?
Yeah, Ken Grace. Oh my gosh, I just forgot his name. He's over at Modesto Junior College. holy schmoly, I can't
You
believe I
don't
forgot his name.
forget names very often. Yeah,
I
that's
don't. I can
yeah.
see his face and everything, and he's got an
Hmm.
accent. Anyway,
So
it'll come to me.
you did level one. Hmm.
I did level one, and actually the piece that kind of linked it to back to where I knew I was supposed to be there was Matt Lightham was one of the instructors
Oh
who
yeah.
was my co-head coach at San Francisco State. And
Oh, I
so
didn't
I
know that.
literally, yeah, so he and his wife were the head coaches at the time. So I
Okay.
walk up to him and I said, Coach Lightham, I don't know if you remember me, but I was on the team 98, 99, 99, 2000 at San Francisco State. I was a jumper. And he looks at me and he goes, yeah, I totally remember you. And, it doesn't help that I was one of 3 Asian females on our jump squad. That doesn't ever happen. Only in California does that happen, you know. Um, but yeah, and it rekindled a love of, this is where I'm supposed to be. And I was supposed to be furthering my education. After that, I did level 2s of the Wazoo. I have all but distance and throws.
Wow.
Um, I then did my level 3, the IAAF level 5 slash IAAF
Mhm.
level 5 course. And now I teach level 1s, and I'm on the slate to teach level 2 in July.
Oh,
So
is that
I love it.
right?
Mhm.
Oh,
Mhm.
that's cool. I taught for several years level ones as well. I
Mhm.
ended up teaching somewhere between 20 and 30. And I
Oh
tell you,
wow.
it's one thing to be in the classroom and learn from great people like Ken Grace and Matt Lightham, who's a good
Uh
friend.
huh.
You really double down when you teach that material to others. Like it
Exactly.
really becomes ingrained. I would have to think, these coaches that are in the coaches collab that are panelists and they're teaching, part of it is a little bit of the selfishness for them of like, oh, I'm going to get better by teaching.
Mhm. Exactly.
Because we get stuck on the track and we're teaching an athlete. That's one thing, but then to transition to a classroom, you have to
Mhm.
verbalize it different, visualize it different, and help other people understand not just what you're teaching, but how to teach that to their athletes.
Exactly.
Wow, that's awesome. And through that coach's education, did anything spark back then of like you wanted to be in education for coaching like you are now?
Mhm.
I mean, that's basically what you are. You're running an education platform. Or was it just more of just receiving to be a coach so that you could be a better coach?
Um, Indirectly, it was about regurgitating and progressing the education to others. Um, Being as young as I am in quote unquote coaching ages, I knew that there weren't so many people who were really going to listen to me. And that was okay. I get that. I completely understand that. So those who did want to have conversations, I would always entertain them. I would not hesitate. One, I know how much gall it takes to actually step up and ask for help. Two, I know how much gall it takes for someone to make themselves vulnerable to release the information. And that's the big thing for me is, you know, I laugh because Huffins has verbalized it in a way I could never put words to it before. He said, I don't want to die with all this information. I want to pass it on. And it doesn't make sense to. Why, I don't know why we want to harbor it, and then it's not like we're in the X-Men and they can put tabs on our brains to get all extracted all. I've got to pass on my legacy for whatever it is. And it's not even so much legacy, because we all know the science base is the same. It's the application and the methods and whatnot. And maybe we have clusters of people who coach similarly, but we're not ever the same. Whether it's verbiage, whether it's demeanor, whether it's delivery, whatever it is. I just want to make sure that people are able to be as effective as they can be. And so that's where it really turned over is, what is it? Help one, teach one. There's whatever that adage is. Um, just one at a time. That's all I want, is one at a time, just to help.
Well, again, check that box. You are doing that, not just one. You're help 3,000, teach 3,000. So
Hmm.
that's awesome. So as we start to wrap up here, let's look in our crystal ball. What does the future look like for Coach Chu? Do you have aspirations of being a head coach one day, moving back? Every good friend of mine who's from California moves back to California. So
Really.
are you wanting to head back to the West Coast? What might it look like for you?
Um, Okay, so here are my specifics. So
Ooh,
not necessarily
shocker. Hold
going
on.
to, I know, right?
Not surprised at all here.
I
You're like, oh yeah, let
know.
me give you, I got the 1, 2, 3, 4 list here. Okay, let's hear
Exactly.
it.
So not that it has to be the West Coast. It can be the East Coast, but it has to be the specific lower East Coast, but higher than Florida-ish, because I don't necessarily want to do hurricanes, but not limited to. I'm open for experiences.
So above the hurricane line, but it sounds like below the snow line. Is that what you're?
Exactly.
Okay, that's what I.
Exactly. So it's a very limited range. I know that.
Yeah. So you're talking about
But
South
what I
Carolina is what we're talking about. Which,
exactly, the Carolinas are the destination.
by the way, they get hurricanes too. I hate to break that to you.
I know, and there's snow too, depending on where you
That's
go.
right.
So, right. So anything a little bit warmer. I like the snow, but I don't necessarily want the long winters. Um, I was just saying this to a friend yesterday that actually it was to my dad. Just kidding. I don't mind California, but if I move back, it has to be so that I can live just as I am now.
Mm,
So there, that looks like a 7-digit figure
mm,
salary, which, in coaching, God knows how that'll happen. But,
mm.
you know, um, at this point, I know that wherever I am in the country, I would even go to say internationally, as long as I've got my family with me and I'm growing and progressing as an individual, I'm good. So, there are dream things, beaches, seafood, fresh seafood.
That's
um,
right.
those things are the objectives. But I'm not limited now. I know I can survive, and I know I can thrive, not just survive. So that's the big thing. In regards to coaching, head coach position is on the horizon. I hope that I learned that it doesn't have to come when I'm ready. It has to be ready for me.
Hmm. Say that
So it's
again.
one of
I want to
those.
hear. I want to hear that again.
So that I don't have to be ready for head coaching, but the head coaching position has to be ready for me. So what I mean by that is, let's say a head coaching job comes available tomorrow. Am I fully equipped? Probably not. But am I equipped enough? Absolutely. But I have to be in a position where I'm going to be supported. I'm going to have to be in a position where, the vision is shared by those who it needs to be shared by. So I've learned that over the last few years that it's not something that I have to have on as a time marker, but as something that can be cultivated.
I like
So,
that, being open for the opportunity, not being
mhm,
necessarily ready for the opportunity. You can grow into that, but
mhm,
being open that if the right opportunity arises, you can step up into that challenge and have success.
exactly,
Mm.
exactly. And the biggest thing that I've learned from my move in 2016 is it's okay to be scared. You just can't be so fearful that you're disabled by it.
Mm.
So,
Mhm.
I know that within coaching, again, I don't know that I would turn down a head coaching job if it came up sooner than later. But I'm okay being an assistant coach right now. It allows me to be home when I want to or as necessary with my kids. I get to go to baseball games with my son. My daughter, I get to go see her choir present or performances. She's so I don't know that that's always able to happen as a head coach. It kind of depends on the program and the level, of course. So I'm not in a rush, but I'm also not going to deny something of its opportunity.
Well, certainly, no doubt with your coaching ability, and not even almost a little bit like akin to what you said there about being open for the opportunity. Not only where you are today as a coach, on the track coach, and what you do with your
Hmm.
athletes, but how you are continually growing as that coach. So,
Hmm.
what you may think of your level and expertise today is no doubt because of your openness to grow and learn, that you're going to be an even better coach tomorrow and the next
Hmm.
day and the next day. It's a continual building, almost that DeAndre Woods and I from Chapman, we talked about building the
Hmm.
wall and brick by brick. And,
Yep.
not just one big thing. You got to start with smaller bricks sometimes and then build up. So I think for sure your coaching, your actual on the track coaching continues to improve. And certainly from the side that we see here at Gill, you know, your organization skills, your time management, of course. I actually still don't know how you do it, to be real frank. But also even more important is the value that you give selflessly. I mean, it's just really amazing, Marissa. It'd been a whole different thing if
Thank you.
I mean, there's just so many avenues you could have taken with this group and with your coaching and with your coaching profession, that leap of faith to come out here to Indiana, based on, you know, of all people, Huffins. I don't, you know,
I know, right?
we got to talk offline about Huff and stuff. I mean that in all good
Right.
way. I know you're listening, Huff. You know I love you, man. He's a great guy, and
He is.
even beyond his athleticism, he's a, you know, honestly, my favorite thing about him, side note, he's a really good father. I mean, the dude just
Absolutely.
nails it as a father and family figure, man. He is game changer when it comes to that. So
He is.
happy and
He
proud
is
of him
a
there.
great guy.
Well, you're doing a great job, Marissa, and you know, it's one of those things that we just had to have you on here because I hope, honestly, the leadership that you are exhibiting, I hope other people see it. I love that there are other leaders now in the Coaches Collab because that means they saw your leadership and they stepped up. I hope that you serve. I know that you will serve as an example for others, people that are just now getting out of college and want to get into coaching, or that first year coach that it was like, I can't do this, I can't do X, I can't do Y, and it's like, you know what, Marissa did it. You know, you can take those leap of faith. You can continue to be open for opportunities to improve yourself. And ultimately what you're doing is you're improving our profession of coaching track and field. And there can't be enough kudos for you doing that, Marissa. You've done an
Thank
amazing
you.
job, and we're so appreciative of everything that you do.
I appreciate it. It's something that had to be done and will continue to be done.
You know, this gets published, like people are going to hear that. So you've got, you know, you'll have to actually do it.
I know, I'm locked in
Okay.
now. Crap.
Remember, I told you no edits. I'm not cutting that part
I
out.
know,
You
right? Oh,
heard it right
dang
here.
it.
Marissa is going to continue this in how it evolves, right? It's not necessarily going to look the same as it is today for a lot of obvious reasons. Just like your career is not going to look the same today as it will next year and in the future. It's going to
Correct.
continue to grow as you continue to improve yourself in the sport and you continue to be open to those opportunities. Thank you so much for being here, man. This was a lot of fun, Marissa.
I
I'm glad we got to
appreciate it.
learn who you are, not just the group. It's
Yeah,
awesome
no,
to
I
kind of
appreciate it.
dig into you and your career and your personal life. It's really amazing and a real inspiration. And I'm just so happy and blessed that you would spend the time with us to allow us to share your journey.
Yeah, thank you for listening.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, Marissa Chu.
Thank you.